So we had a question this week about tinning.
If you need to tin your soldering iron, probably have had it, probably maybe even not even use a rheostat on it, and it's getting too hot, and then you're wiping it off, and you can take the tinning plate off of your soldering iron if you're allowing it to stay too hot without using it and just sitting there and just burning away, turning blue or black. So you don't want to leave your soldering iron, if you're not going to use it, just unplug it or make sure you turn it off. Don't ever turn them down, because you'll go away and do something and forget that it's on and leave for the night, and who knows what can happen once that happens. But if you need to tin your soldering iron, the best thing I can tell you to do is, first, number one, use a rheostat to control the temperature of your soldering iron. What you would want to do is you really never want to use flux on your soldering iron. It gets enough of it splashed up on it while you're soldering. So what you want to do is just take a damp cloth at about just enough heat to make the soldering iron, the tip, turn kind of a bluish purple color. And that's going to be too hot to use, but it's not too hot to tin it. So then wipe it 1-2 with just a very damp, nothing dripping water on it, just real quick, and then put some solder on it and let it run off of it, and then let it cool. Turn the iron off and let it cool. So a lot of times you may have to do this 2 or 3 times, but you can tin your tip again. Most of the time, guys and gals, it's easier just to get a new tip and be done with it. And remember, if you're leaving your soldering iron idling at a very high temperature, you're the one destroying your soldering iron. Those things are expensive. I hope that helped. I use a wattage controller, and if I'm not using my iron, it's off.
Yeah.
I mean, soldering irons are way too expensive, and I like to use the good ones, so I don't leave them burning to where the tip's going to rot out. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Your soldering iron looks old, but the tip looks brand new. You know what I mean? Your iron is, the lettering is worn off. It's the end is kind of rough looking, but the tip is, you keep that tip.
Keep the tip pristine.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're done with it, when you turn it off, as it cools down, not while it's still premium hot, but as it cools down a little bit, just take that damp cloth again, wipe it off, and let it finish cooling. I hang my soldering irons up. It's just personal preference. And I have like 4 different size tips that I use. I use all the way up to a 1/2 inch wide. When we're building church windows and you're using 1/2 inch flat H lead, you need to move across those 300 or 400 soldering joints, touch and go, and you need a tip that can handle that work. And an iron that is, it's a 250 watt iron that I use when I'm working that good. A sponge works too on cleaning your tip, but you don't want to get it so wet that it actually cools it down. All you're doing is you're wiping that. If your soldering iron sits there idling and it's got a little bit of solder on it, you're going to find these little black beads will pop up on your soldering iron. That's what you want to wipe off before you start soldering a nice clean bead, down your copper foil.